Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight I will be doing a playthrough of Five Nights at Freddy's as I read some scary stories. As always, the stories will be linked in the description along with the videos used, music used, playlists, timestamps, and my TikTok. And if you like videos like this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video.
For you to help you get settled in on your first night. I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact, so I know it can be a bit overwhelming, but I'm here to tell you there's nothing to worry about. You'll be fine. So let's just focus on getting you through your first week, okay? Let's see. First, there's an introductory greeting from the company that I'm supposed to read. It's kind of a legal thing, you know. Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to property or person. Upon discovering that damage or death has occurred, a missing person report will be filed within 90 days or as soon as property and premises have been thoroughly cleaned and bleached and the carpets have been replaced. Blah, blah, blah. Now, that might sound bad, I know, but there's really nothing to worry about. The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night, but do I blame them? No. If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too. So remember, these characters hold a special place in the hearts of children and we need to show them a little respect, right? Okay. So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up if they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day too, but then there was the bite of 87. Yeah, it's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know? Now concerning your safety, the only real risk to you as a night watchman here, if any, is the fact that these characters, if they happen to see you after hours, probably won't recognize you as a person. They'll most likely see you as a metal endoskeleton without its costume on. Now, since that's against the rules here at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, they'll probably try to forcefully stuff you inside a Freddy Fazbear suit. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if the suits themselves weren't filled with cross beams, wires, and animatronic devices, especially around the facial area. So you can imagine how having your head forcefully pressed inside one of those could cause a bit of discomfort and death. The only parts of you that would likely see the light of day again would be your eyeballs and teeth that pop out the front of the mask. Yeah, they don't tell you these things when you sign up. But hey, first station of the breeze. I'll chat with you tomorrow. Check those cameras and remember to close the doors only if absolutely necessary. Gotta conserve power. Alright, good night.
My mother built a playroom in her basement. I don't think we're alone down here. My 6-year-old son and I moved back in with my mom a week ago. My mom lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. so she turned the basement into a playroom to help deal with the horrible winters. But nothing could prepare me for how elaborate it was. As soon as Aiden saw it, he squealed, but I froze. It was a lot. A huge wooden fort raised off the ground. A green plastic slide leading from it to a massive ball pit. A yellow brick road painted on the floor that melted into the Wizard of Oz mural on the west wall. Each wall was different. The others were Lion King, Snow White, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And there were not one but two plastic playhouses across from the fort. Honestly, it was almost a little creepy how elaborate it was. My mom and I don't have the closest relationship. We used to be close, but she never approved of my soon-to-be ex-husband Robbie, and she was never crafty or artsy. Did she hire people to do all this? She was as miserly as they came, and while the basement was souped up to the max, the lighting was still depressing. 3 bare bulbs fighting to light the space. The bright colors of the ball pit in dim shadow made the place feel more like Five Nights at Freddy's than Chuck E. Cheese's. Shadows pooled behind the slide in the fort, and I wondered if my mom had ever eradicated her mouse problem. I watched as Aiden slid down the green slide into the ball pit, screeching with laughter. "How much did this cost, Mom?" I asked, turning to her. She waved her hand nervously. "Don't worry about it." "No, seriously, how much did you spend?" She shrugged. "I did it myself." "You did not," I said, breaking into a smile. "Come on, you can't draw a Simba to save your life." I gestured to the Simba walking next to Nala as they entered the elephant graveyard. It wasn't perfect. There wasn't much shading and the faces were a little screwy, but it was way better than my mom could do. HM. Elephant graveyard. Interesting choice. Actually, all 4 murals were a little morbid. I stared at Snow White, leaning out her cottage, reaching for the shiny red apple the witch was holding up. Definitely not the fairest one of all anymore, with one eye an inch higher than the other, and her arm twisted at an impossible angle. "Okay, I had a little help," she admitted, "but seriously, don't worry about it." Honestly, I was grateful. With no friends here and a bitterly cold winter ahead of us, this would be absolutely amazing for Aiden. I smiled and gave her a hug. "You didn't have to do it, but thanks, Mom." As I hugged her, I stared at the corner shelf stacked with dolls, including a Dorothy with miniature Toto and Belinda, my favorite doll from when I was Aiden's age. They stared back at me with glassy eyes. The first few days were phenomenal. I felt so free, like this was the first day of the rest of our lives. The divorce was almost final. I was hundreds of miles away. I was with my mom, and Aiden was having the time of his life in the playroom. Even though we were already under 6 inches of snow, things were looking up until Tuesday. After school, I let Aiden down in the playroom while I got some food ready for him. He wasn't alone more than 10 minutes, but when I went down, he wasn't there. "Aiden," I called. No answer. "Aiden." I spun around. He wasn't in plain sight, probably in a raised fort or one of the plastic playhouses, ignoring me as per usual. "Aiden, please come out now," I said. "I have your food." Silence. Something is wrong. "If you don't come out now, no screens for the rest of the day." I called, panic creeping into my voice. Nothing. I hurried over to the fort, hoisting myself up on the ladder, a Snow White book, and a Hot Wheels car. But no Aiden. I came back down and wrenched open the plastic door. Each playhouse. Pop, pop. Empty. "Aiden." I called. Tap, tap, tap. I whirled around, just in time to see a few balls in the ball pit move. Just the tiniest bit, but enough for me to catch it. "Oh, great. We're playing hide and seek now, are we?" I scrambled over, crouched at the inflatable plastic edge, and began digging where I'd seen the balls moving. I didn't think the pit was even deep enough to fully hide Aiden. "Where the fuck are you?" I blanched as my hands hit the bottom of the pit. Dirty white plastic stared back up at me. "No Aiden. Where are you?" I yelled. "He's not here. That must have just been a mouse. Or just the balls settling for me running around here." But something told me to keep digging. He had to be down here. I hadn't heard him come up the stairs, and the windows were far too high for him to reach. I kept digging, and then I saw it. His shoe. Oh, God. He was lying on the bottom of the ball pit. No, no, no. I dug wildly, uncovering him. A leg, a torso, then his face. His eyes closed. Oh God, he's dead. No. Aiden! I screamed. His eyes fluttered open. Mommy? He asked groggy. I pulled him up and hugged him tight, tears streaming down my face. What happened? I choked as I finally pulled back. What happened? I don't know. Did you fall? He thought about it, then shook his head. Did you hurt yourself? No. I think I was just sleeping. Sleeping. He fell asleep. At the bottom of the ball pit, with only a thin plastic liner between him and the hard, ice-cold concrete floor. He must have hit his head. He must have passed out. But then, how did all the balls get on top of him? Does anything hurt? I asked. He shook his head. I went to sleep. My heart began to slow. Maybe he really did fall asleep. Maybe he lay down and covered himself with the balls. It was dark and quiet, and he was tired from school probably, and he had low blood sugar probably. Maybe.
Just to make sure everyone's in their proper place, you know. Interestingly enough, Freddy himself doesn't come on stage very often. I've heard he becomes a lot more active in the dark, though. So, hey, I guess that's one more reason not to run out of power, right? I also want to emphasize the importance of using your door lights. There are blind spots in your camera views, and those blind spots happen to be right outside your doors. So if you can't find something or someone on your cameras, be sure to check the door light. You might only have a few seconds to react. Not that you would be in any danger, of course. I'm not implying that. Also, check on the curtain in Pirate Cove from time to time. The character in there seems unique in that he becomes more active if the cameras remain off for long periods of time. I guess he doesn't like being watched. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure you have everything under control. Talk to you soon.
I'd heard of kids going missing, the police being called, only to be found sleeping in some weird place no one checked, like a closet, or in a somewhat dangerous place, like under a bed. I guess Aiden had occasionally dozed off in front of the TV, or in other slightly strange places, especially when he was sick, but always on a couch or something soft. Everything about this felt wrong. I'm okay, he insisted, sounding annoyed now. He pushed himself up and looked around. Then he went over to the table, where several of his Hot Wheels cars were lined up. I was still gasping for breath, still shaking. He's okay, I told myself. He's fine. See? He just fell asleep. But everything felt wrong. Did you get the basement tested for mold? Mom looked up at me, frowning. I mean, a few years ago I did. What about radon? Yeah, we did that too when we moved in. Carbon monoxide? There's a detector down there. She crossed her arms. You know I wouldn't put Aiden in any place that wasn't safe. I know, I said hesitantly. Is this still about him falling asleep? She asked, turning her back on me to stir the pot on the stove. Don't worry about that. Kids fall asleep in weird places all the time. One time he fell asleep on the floor. Sprawled out like this, she flung her arms out. I freaked out and thought you were dead, but you were fine, I guess. I still felt anxious about it. I knew my kid, and my motherly sixth sense was screaming. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something is... Your nerves are fried, Mom said. You've been in survival mode for 7 years now. And who wouldn't be with that bastard? But it's over now. You can relax. Not everything is a threat. Not everything is the end of the world. You're safe now. Robbie wasn't that bad. I sniped, even though I hated Robbie with every fiber of my being. Damn it, I hated it when she was right. Mom ignored me. The doctor said he was okay, right? So he's fine. Yeah. I'd taken him to the urgent care place, out of an abundance of caution. But the doctor said he seemed completely fine. Chalked it up to the move, fatigue, stress. Mom moved the pot off the stove. Soup's ready. Are you sure Aiden won't eat it? Yeah, he hates soup. All kinds of soup? Yup. Okay, she said with a laugh. Guess he's more like you than I thought. Yeah, even though Aiden had Robbie's long, wavy, golden brown hair and bright blue eyes, he had none of his aggression, None of his anger and all of my gentleness. I would do my best to make sure it stayed that way. I couldn't sleep that night. At about 1 a.m., I got out of bed and went downstairs. The house was peacefully silent, and I sat at the table with some weird lemon yogurt my mom had bought, trying to relax. But I couldn't. What if Aiden really did hit his head and the doctor didn't notice? He could die in his sleep. Subdural hematoma. Or what if there was a mouse in the ball pit and it bit him? What if it had hantavirus? Rabies? What if he touched or eaten something toxic and then passed out? All this stuff was from Facebook Marketplace, according to Mom. For all I knew, the ball pit could have bacteria, mold, lead, paint from an old house. The play fort could be covered in asbestos. Or drugs. Did she even clean this stuff? Vet the cellars at all? The doctor didn't run any blood tests or anything. We wouldn't even know. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Don't spiral. Don't. If Aiden huffed cocaine off the floor of the play fort, you'd know. You'd know. Before I knew it, though, I was walking back down the basement stairs. I just want to see. Then I'll go to sleep. The stairs creaked under my weight. When I got to the bottom, I shuddered. Other than the dim golden light spilling out from the staircase, the basement was pitch black. I could only see the wet glint of the doll's eyes on the corner shelf. I walked forward, cursing as I stepped on hot wheels. I reached my hand up and flailed for the string. Click. The light came on, jittering to life. Now, in the quiet of the night, the basement looked 10 times worse. Like those photos you see of abandoned play places and theme parks. There was something so disturbing about brightly colored slides, smiling stuffed animal faces, juxtaposed with silence, shadows, decay. The play fort rose above me. The flying monkey stuffies staring down at me with mean little eyes. The balls in the pit glinted under the harsh light, bright reds, greens, yellows. I turned on my phone flashlight and walked around the perimeter of the basement first, looking for mouse droppings. I didn't see any, and the tension in my chest eased up. I walked over to the first playhouse and pushed the door open with my foot. The plastic squeaked. I shone the light inside. Gossamer cobwebs gathered in the upper corner. But other than that, empty. The second playhouse wasn't empty. In the middle of the concrete floor sat a shoe, red and white, with dirty little laces, slightly smaller than Aiden's size. I reached in and picked it up. How did this get here? It wasn't ours. Maybe my mom had bought Aiden a pair of shoes before we arrived, but these look used. I swallowed and tucked the shoe into a corner. I'd ask her about it tomorrow. I continued my search, climbing up the ladder to the wooden fort and shined all around. Nothing looked amiss there, either. Sighing, I made my way back down, which was much harder than it looked. Finally back on solid ground, I stared at the ball pit. I stepped inside. The plastic balls bumped against my calves. The pit felt deeper than it had earlier, definitely deep enough to hide a child. I waded through them to the middle of the pit, roughly where Aiden had been lying. The middle seemed even deeper, the balls nearly up to my knees. It must have cost a fortune to fill this. I crouched down and dug into them, until I could see the white plastic liner underneath. I half expected to see a smear of blood, proving that Aiden fell, but I didn't. I slipped my hand under the balls and moved it in a wide circle around me, feeling for a crease or a slippery spot that might have tripped him. The balls rolled against my arm, all the way up to my elbow, as I widened the circumference of my circle and kept feeling.
That's not what I meant. Anyway, I better not take up too much of your time. Things are getting real tonight. Hey, listen, I had an idea. If you happen to get caught and want to avoid getting stuffed into a Freddy suit, try playing dead. You know, go limp. Then there's a chance that maybe they'll think that you're an empty costume instead. Then again, if they think you're an empty costume, they might try to stuff a mental skeleton into you. I wonder how that would work. Yeah, never mind. Scratch that. It's best just not to get caught. Okay, I'll leave you to it. See you on the flip side.
My hand collided with something. Something that jerked back at my touch. No. I yanked my hand back and froze. My heart pounded in my ears. Something's in here. Oh, God. Something. Plap. A red ball in front of me moved. It bounced down the others. Plap, plap, plap. Just that one ball. Not as a mouse scurrying underneath, making them all move. No. It was like something underneath had intentionally poked just that one ball. What the hell? I stood there frozen, the cold plastic balls pooling around my calves. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Plap. A green one. Spinning and rolling towards me. Oh, God, there's something in here. I scrambled toward the edge. Plap, plap, plap. Behind me, getting closer. Something caught my foot. Alive or not, I couldn't tell. The ball pit flew up to meet me as my arms pinwheeled. Oh, God, no. Brightly colored balls filled my vision. Then darkness. My eyes blinked open. Bright sunlight streamed in through the tiny windows 8 feet up. Cement walls crudely painted. Sharp pain throbbed through my head. Where the hell? Oh! The events of last night came flooding back. I was still in the basement. Terrified, I thrashed out of the ball pit. Wincing in pain, I pulled myself up. I ran upstairs and checked on Aiden. He was fine, still sleeping, since it was only 6 a.m. Mom! I choked out, pounding on her door. I told her everything through sobs. When Aiden woke up, I went back to the doctor. I was certain he hit his head and blacked out, just like I had, but he was fine. I got checked out myself, too. I had a concussion. When we got home, I went down the basement and emptied the entire ball pit. It took an hour, but all I found was the other red shoe, near where I tripped and fallen. No explanation for the balls moving. It was probably a mouse, my mom said. It wasn't. I cleaned the rest of the basement, too. Looked in every nook and cranny. I didn't find any evidence of anything. Still, I couldn't let Aiden play down there. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted. I don't want Aiden playing down there. I told my mom. You're freaking out about nothing, she replied. He fell asleep after school because he was tired. You got yourself so worked up, you tripped and fell and could have gotten a concussion or something. I don't care. It's my kid, and I don't want him going down there. For a few days, everything was fine. Then Aiden came down with a fever. At 2 a.m., I woke him screaming. Don't feel good, he managed between cries. I pressed a hand to his forehead. He felt a bit hot, but with that came relief. Maybe he really did fall asleep in the ball pit a few days ago. When he's sick, he'll fall asleep anywhere. I ran downstairs and rummaged with the thermometer, but we hadn't unpacked all the way yet, and I had no idea where my mom kept hers. Fuck. Well, at least it didn't feel too hot, but still, I ran back upstairs. But when I pushed the door open, I froze in my tracks. Aiden wasn't crying anymore. He was just sitting there in the middle of his race car bed, staring at the wall. Aiden, I asked. He didn't turn towards me, just kept staring. I scrambled over to him, got in his face. Aiden! His eyes finally tore from the wall and looked at me. Are you okay? Don't feel good, he repeated, and then he started crying again. After holding him for several minutes, I ran over to my mom's room and banged on the door. She didn't know where a thermometer was, but she got some Advil for him. I gave it to him, and he settled back to sleep for 45 minutes. Even though I'd given him Advil, he kept waking up every hour until dawn, at which point the fever seemed to have broken, and he decided he felt well enough to watch TV. Fuck this. I set him up in front of the TV. But I was so tired I could barely move. When my mom woke up, I ran over and begged her to watch him. Of course, she said, going to the fridge and getting out her orange juice. She smiled sweetly at Aiden. We'll have fun together, won't we? Eternally grateful, I hobbled back up the stairs. I woke up and rolled over, looking at my phone. 2:13 p.m. Holy shit, I slept that long? I got out of bed, dressed, and went downstairs. Sorry, Mom, I'm up. I called as I zipped up my hoodie. The house was quiet. A coloring book lay out on the kitchen table. Some crayons scattered around. Aiden's Hot Wheels were scattered on the floor. There was a plate of half-eaten chicken nuggets on the counter. Mom? Aiden? She must have taken him somewhere. Unease settled in my gut. I leaned to look out the window over the sink to see both her and my car in the driveway. Oh, God. What if my mom fainted or something? What if Aiden ran out the door? I scrambled around. Aiden? Mom, we're down here, a faint voice called. I stopped. Of course. The basement. I thundered down the stairs. Mom was sitting on the floor, reading a book, while Aiden sat in one of the playhouses, talking to himself. I told you not to bring him down here. I said, I know, but he was so bored, and he was on YouTube for like 2 hours, she replied. I told you it wasn't safe. Will you stop? There's nothing wrong. Besides, you checked the whole place anyway. Everything is fine. I wanted to yell and scream, but I had checked the whole basement, and she'd been stuck with him for hours while I slept. Now that Aiden was sick, it made more sense that he really had fallen asleep for a nap down here, and I really had freaked myself out and fallen and hit my head, even though I knew I'd seen the balls moving. I'd checked the entire place. No one, nothing was here. Okay, well, thanks. I'll take over now. Why don't you get a bite to eat? She asked. I said, I'll take over. I replied. Okay. She closed her book and headed towards the stairs. I waited for the door to close, then turned to Aiden. I could see a bit of his long, wavy, golden brown hair poking out a playhouse window, bobbing up and down as he played. You have fun with Grammy? I asked. He didn't reply. I scooted closer to the playhouse. The plastic little flower boxes looked especially fake up close. Pointy seams cutting to the lavender and peach colored plastic. Aiden, are you hungry? Want to go upstairs and finish your chicken nuggets? Still nothing, which wasn't unusual when he was really in the zone. I watched the back of his head through the playhouse window, slowly bobbing. But then I realized there was something off about the way his head was moving. It wasn't bobbing up and down as if he were concentrating on something. It was more swinging slowly back and forth. Aiden? I asked, my throat going tight. I grabbed the plastic door and wrenched it open. All the blood drained out of my face. His hair taped to a baseball, tied to the ceiling of the playhouse, slowly swinging back and forth. Oh God, what the fuck? What the... Gotcha. I spun around to see Aiden behind me, giggling madly. Fooled you, he said, pumping his fists. What the... Grammy gave me a haircut. See? He asked, pointing to his new short hair. I just sat there, mouth gaping open. This isn't funny. I finally croaked out. It is funny. Ha ha ha, he taunted. I pranked you. I reached in, yanked the ball down, and stormed up the stairs. Mom! I shouted. She was sitting in the kitchen, eating a sandwich, scrolling her phone. What? She asked. But then she turned and saw I was holding the ball. Did you tell him to do this? She hedged, seeing how mad I was. We did it together. It was his idea, she added defensively. And what about the haircut? Was that his idea? He looks much better with it short, she said, averting her eyes. I don't care. Did you make him cut his hair? I suggested it. He seemed fine with it. I couldn't believe this. She cut his hair, told him to tape it on this ball. Or maybe did it herself. To do this totally unhinged, sick prank. This is crazy, I said, holding the ball up. Fucking crazy. Okay, calm down, okay? She said, holding her hands up. I watched him for like 7 hours. I gave him a haircut. He was bored. I told her we could prank you when you got up. You said it was his idea. I shouted. I just told him we could prank you. I can't believe you would do that to your own. I was cut off by Aiden's yell, coming from downstairs. For a split second, I froze. Time seemed to stop as Mom and I stared at each other. Then I sprinted for the basement stairs. I was screaming, but when I found Aiden, he was standing in the middle of the basement, not upset but laughing. Look, Mommy, he shouted. I paled. He was wearing the red shoes. I thought they were too small for him, but now they seemed to fit perfectly as he jumped around and grinned. I got cool shoes, he said over and over. Take those off, I said. Take them off. Now. Why? They could be dirty. I dodged for him and grabbed the shoes, tearing them off him. This was too weird. He couldn't wear some other kid's shoes. We went back upstairs, and I threw them out. My mom watched me, arms crossed, a concerned look on her face. For the next several days, Aiden seemed off. Meltdowns, barely talking to me. He must be sick, I kept telling myself. But his fever was gone, and he wasn't coughing, wasn't showing any symptoms. Something is wrong. There are long-term illnesses that can happen after infection. Long COVID. Pandas/pans after strep or other infections. Neurological symptoms of Lyme. His behavior was so different and erratic. I wonder if the fever had caused some sort of neurological response. I took him back to the doctor to get his bloods taken. A full exam. Everything. The most random things were thrown around. From gluten sensitivity to stress from the move. Change the diet. Get him more exercise. Do a mold test. I felt like I was being pulled in 1,000 different directions. But nothing prepared me for tonight. I woke up with a start around 3 a.m. I rolled over, trying to get comfortable. But as I was falling back asleep, I heard a soft sound. The sound of something rolling across the floor. I jerked up, just in time to see a red ball rolling out from under my bed. I watched in horror as it bounced against the closet door and came to a stop, hands shaking. I grasped the edge of the bed. I leaned over, peering down. Couldn't see anything, just darkness. Then there was a sound of something shifting underneath me. 2 small hands shot out, fingers curling around the underside of my bed, pale and gray in the darkness. Aiden, I whispered. The sound of cloth sliding against wood. A tuft of hair poked out from under the bed, then a pale forehead. Then Aiden's eyes staring back up at me, unseeing, blank. Aiden! I screamed. He pushed out further from under the bed. His lips moved frantically, forming whispered words I could barely hear. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I jumped out of bed and grabbed Aiden, shook him awake. For a minute he remained in the trance, the sleepwalking state, until he woke with a start. Mom, he murmured. I put him back to sleep, sobbing. When he was finally soundly asleep, I ran to my mom's room, pushed the door open. The bed was empty. Mom! I called out, my entire body weak. I'm down here, she called. I ran down to the kitchen. My mom sat facing away from me, her reflection in the glass door staring blankly back. Have a seat, she said, her voice shaking. I have something to tell you. My heart plummeted. I sat across from her, my legs weak. What's going on? Her hands shook as she reached for her cup, took a long sip. I didn't get the stuff downstairs from Facebook Marketplace. I got everything from one person, she said. I stared at her, frozen. One of my friends knew someone who knew this woman. Her son had just died. Cancer. She was looking to give everything away. A ball pit to play fort, everything. She finally looked up at me. Now that I think about it, it's weird. Why would she give it all to me? Why wouldn't she split it up or give it to a friend or something? She took another drink. When I went over there, we chatted first, and she wanted to see a photo of Aiden, and I showed her. I did. She blinked back tears. I'm so sorry. It didn't seem weird then. She showed me a whole bunch of photos of her kid, and he looked a lot like Aiden, just a little younger. And she began to sob. He had short hair and wore those red shoes every photo. Mom, what are you saying? She sniffed. Then her eyes met mine. Earlier tonight, I made soup, she whispered. He ate it. He ate it all. My heart dropped. I don't think that's Aiden anymore. For the last 30 years, I have been paid to guard a single gravestone. I've been doing this for over 30 years. 30 years of just sitting and staring at a gravestone. I don't even know who the thing belongs to. You best believe I try to find out, though I have scanned every pockmarked surface of that stone slab over the years. It's so weathered that the only part of the deceased name I can make out is a B and an R. Not much to go off of. I do know that the guy or gal died in 1872. That's it, just a death date. I don't even know who my employer is. The opportunity fell in my lap in the most literal sense of the phrase. I was 32 at the time. I had just been dumped by the love of my life, and my career in journalism wasn't panning out how I'd hoped. I was feeling particularly down the night that it happened. I got sloppy drunk and wrote the most poorly composed article known to man run-on sentences, punctuation mistakes out the wazoo, grammatical errors that would put a preschooler to shame. It was a true abomination. At some point in my mad typing frenzy, I must have dozed off, because I awoke the next day to find that I had fallen asleep at my desk. In my drunken haze, I had managed to knock a few papers into my lap. It was then that I noticed a letter. The stark white envelope bore a wax seal. I instantly knew that it hadn't been there before. I retrieved my letter opener and tore at the envelope. In my groggy state, I had yet to make the connection. I lived alone, so how had the letter found its way in my lap? I let the envelope fall to the floor as I read the contents within. Dear Mr. Calloway, we are contacting you with an employment opportunity. We have been observing you for some time, and we have come to the conclusion that you are a perfect fit for the position. As for the job itself, you'll be required to guard a grave at Blackstone Cemetery from sundown to sunup Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday night should you accept. You are to contact us immediately if you experience anything out of the ordinary. We hope to hear from you soon. Your benefactors. At the bottom of the letter was a phone number along with my salary, should I accept the offer. Even working just 4 days out a week, it blew my journalism gig out of the water. Of course, I took the whole thing with a grain of salt. I had likely received the letter as a prank and forgotten that I had it. Or maybe it was a strange writing assignment from a teenager, but it had been addressed to me. Whatever the case, I chose to give the number a call. What could it hurt? They picked up immediately after I dialed the number. I heard nothing but static and shallow breathing from the other end of the line. I only uttered 2 words before they hung up. I accept. I didn't expect to hear back. I really didn't. I thought I'd been duped, had for a fool. But then the second letter came. Dear Mr. Calloway, we are overjoyed to welcome you to the team. Your first shift will be tomorrow night. Come prepared with a flashlight, a jacket, and some reading material. Best of luck. Your benefactors. A map of the cemetery fell out of the envelope. One grave in particular was marked with a heavy red X. Though I was skeptical, I decided to humor them. What did they have to gain from this anyway? With that in mind, I showed up to the cemetery just before sunset. I found my way to the designated grave with relative ease. Blackstone isn't very big, after all. I stared at the stone inscription, no clearer than it is now, before I plopped down and opened my book to read. Once I had made it past the first night, I thought that I had certainly just wasted my time. But to my utter disbelief, when I arrived home, my first day's pay was waiting for me on the kitchen counter. I should have been more afraid. Someone had access to my home. They had intruded on my property multiple times, and according to the letter, they had been watching me. But I wasn't. I was content as long as the money kept coming in. Fast forward 30 years, and here I am. I was happy with the job. Strange though it was, the graveyard became a sort of safe haven for me. A comfort zone. The worst I had to deal with was the occasional gang of edgy teenagers. Aside from that, the nights were serene. Until last night. What happened has me questioning everything I know about reality itself. I was sitting before the grave as per usual, nose deep in a mystery novel, when it happened. The ground below me began to shift. It leapt up, fearing an earthquake. But as I surveyed my surroundings, I came to realize that only the earth at my feet was disturbed. I watched the dirt, mesmerized, unable to take my eyes away. The ground continued to rumble, until finally something burst from within its depths. A rotting, skeletal hand shot from the earth. It didn't grasp aimlessly. It knew what it wanted. The hand lunged for me, its decaying fingers clasping my ankle. I released a terrified shriek as it pulled down with frightening strength. I kicked at the hand of my free leg, terror surging through my veins. When it finally released me, I realized that I was bleeding. Frantic, I backed up and did the only thing I've been trained to do. I called my employer. They picked up immediately. TH the grave. Whoever's buried there, they've awakened. For the first time, I heard my benefactor's voice. It was deeper than that of any human I have encountered. It uttered a single word: run. I shambled off as quickly as my legs would carry me. Between my age and the damage to my ankle, it was slow going. But eventually I made it to my car and put my foot on the gas. Once I arrived home, heart still threatening to leap from my chest, I was greeted by an envelope. I tore it open without hesitation. I frowned as I read the letter's contents. Dear Mr. Calloway, we regret to inform you that we no longer require your services. Your severance package will be delivered at a later date with an additional lump sum for the injury you sustained on site. Thank you for your understanding. What was living with my mother? When I moved back in with my mother after her hip surgery, I expected a lot of things. I expected the smell of antiseptic. I expected pill bottles all over the kitchen counter. I expected to help her stand up, help her sit down, help her into the shower, and then pretend not to notice how much it humiliated her to need me for any of it. I expected old age to make the house smaller. I didn't expect it to make the house hungry. The first thing I found under her bed was a peach skin. Not a peel, not a pit, just the skin, turned inside out and sucked, so clean it looked almost white. I was changing her sheets when I saw it near the wall, flattened in the shadow cast by the bed frame. At first I thought it was tissue paper. Then I crouched, picked it up, and realized what I was holding. Mom, I said, why is this under your bed? She was in the chair by the window, a blanket over her knees, looking through one of those mail-order catalogs she never bought from. She didn't even turn her head. Throw it out. That was it. No embarrassment, no confusion, no attempt to explain it. Just throw it out. Something about that bothered me more than the peach skin itself. I wish I could tell you I knew, right then, that I was in the wrong kind of story. But people normalize disgusting things for a long time before they call them frightening, especially in family. So I threw it out. The next morning, I found a used bandage behind her radiator with bite marks in it. That was the first thing that made my stomach really turn. The dressing had come off her hip, incision the day before. I knew that because I had changed it myself. Her surgery scar ran along the outside of her thigh, red, puckered, angry looking, held shut by a row of metal staples that made me queasy if I stared too long. I had wrapped the old gauze in tissue and put in the bathroom trash, and now there it was, behind the radiator, unwrapped, damp in the center, one corner compressed with blunt little half-moon marks where something had bitten down and pulled. I stood there too long with it in my hand. Mom, I said louder this time, what the hell is this doing in here? She looked at it, then at me, and I saw something on her face that I misunderstood for another week. Not confusion, not dementia. Shame. I don't know, she said. This came off your leg. So throw it out. There was again that phrase. Not let me see. Not that strange. Not how did it get there. Just get rid of it. By then, I had only been back in the house 10 days, 10 days of helping her to the bathroom, measuring pills into little plastic cups, washing her hair in the sink, because she couldn't stand long enough for a real shower yet. 10 days of hearing her thank me in clipped little bursts like gratitude itself was beneath her. 10 days of sleeping in my old room upstairs and remembering why I had left that house so fast at 18, and then never stayed longer than Christmas after that. My mother has always been a proud woman, but not in the attractive way people romanticize. Not stoic, not dignified. Proud in the mean, impractical way that makes a person insist they're fine while bleeding through a dish towel. So at first I told myself that was all this was. Painkillers, age, embarrassment. Maybe she was hiding food and forgetting it. Except the things I kept finding weren't random. They were all soft. Fruit, yogurt, pudding, applesauce, bread crust gone wet with broth, or butter, a banana with tiny worried bites all the way around it, hidden behind the laundry hamper, a crushed yogurt cup licked clean and tucked under the bed frame, the cap from her cough syrup bottle with teeth marks around the rim, an empty tube of prescription skin cream flattened from the bottom and torn open at the end. That one bothered me almost as much as the bandage, not because of what it was, because of how it had been used. Not squeezed, not spread, open and consumed. And always, the evidence was low to the ground, under the bed, behind the radiator, between the nightstand and the wall, in the narrow gap beside the laundry hamper, never on the dresser, never on the bedside table, never in a place that suggested an old woman had simply dropped something and forgotten it. It was all down near the floor, like whatever was taking it didn't want to be seen standing up. That was the point where I started checking her room at night. At first I did it under a respectable excuse. Water refill, medication check, making sure she hadn't tried to walk to the bathroom alone. Then I stopped pretending to myself. I was searching, under the bed, behind the dresser, the bathroom trash, the laundry basket, inside the nightstand drawers. The room itself began to feel wrong to me in ways I couldn't explain cleanly. It was always warmer than the rest of the house, even with the heat turned down. My mother refused to let me crack the window, even when it smelled stale in there. She insisted on keeping the TV on low through the night, though she always claimed it disturbed her sleep. The sour smell in the room got worse after midnight. Not stronger exactly, closer. One night, around 1:30, I woke up because I heard chewing. It came through the floorboards first, a wet, patient sound, then a pause, then another, not loud, not frantic, not an animal tearing at something, just chewing. I lay still in bed with my heart hitting hard enough to hurt. Chew, pause, chew, downstairs. I got up and stepped into the hall. The house was black except for the bathroom nightlight on the lower floor, throwing a weak orange strip across the entry hall. As soon as my foot hit the third stair, the chewing stopped. I stood there listening so hard my ears rang. Then I heard my mother's voice, not calling out, not frightened, whispering, too soft to catch words. Just that low, private tone people use with shy children, scared dogs, or dying men. I went the rest of the way down the stairs and crossed the hall barefoot. Her bedroom door was open about 2 inches. The lamp inside was off now, but I could see her shape sitting upright on the edge of the bed, facing the far wall. Not the room, not the door, the wall behind the bed. One arm was extended into the dark. For one insane second, I thought she was praying. Then I saw the spoon in her hand. She held it out through a narrow gap between the wardrobe and the wall and made that same soft, soothing sound again. My entire body went cold. The spoon came back empty. I don't know if I made a sound or she sensed me there, but she turned her head all at once, and I saw the fear in her face before she arranged it away. "What are you doing?" I asked. She looked at the spoon, then at me. "Nothing." "What are you feeding?" That landed. She did not answer. She did not ask what I meant. She did not act confused. She looked at me the way a child looks at another child who was just kicked over something secret they built together years ago. Then she said very quietly, "Go back to bed." I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the kitchen until morning and listened to the old house settle around me. The pipes, the refrigerator, the little dry clicks from the baseboards cooling. Every sound felt suspect now, not because it was supernatural, but because I no longer knew which sound belonged to a house and which ones had been hidden inside it all my life. That morning, I moved the wardrobe. My mother tried to stop me, not by shouting. That would have been easier. She pushed herself up on her cane and said, "Don't," in a tone so raw and frightened, I almost listened. Almost. The wardrobe was heavier than it looked, but old wood drags loud over old hardwood. It came away from the wall with a scream of friction and revealed exactly what some part of me had already begun to dread. A panel, painted over to match the wall, low to the ground, about 2 feet wide with an old finger hole near one edge. And when I touched it, a smell breathed out through the seam. I still don't have the right words for that smell. Hot, damp fabric, old spit, medicine syrup, rotting fruit, skin cream, human waste scrub but never fully erased. The smell of a life lived too near its own mouth. Behind me, my mother said my name once. Just once. In that tired voice mothers use when they know the day has already gone bad and can't be repaired. I opened the panel. There was space behind it. Not much, but more than there should have been. A service gap widened over time into something a body could fit through and eventually live in. Blankets, bowls, a flashlight, pill bottles, fruit pits, old magazines, a bucket, a heap of washcloths, a child's plastic plate, a spoon, another spoon, my mother's missing skin cream, and farther back in the dimness, a shape, curled, still, breathing. I lifted my phone light. It moved, not like an animal. That would have been a relief. It moved like a person who had been bent to the dimensions of a wall. One hand came first, palm down on the plywood, fingers splayed too carefully, then a shoulder, then a head tilting into the light. I saw the hands before I saw the face properly, and that made it worse. They were hands, chapped, narrow, bitten at the nails. One wrist healed crooked years ago and left that way. Not claws, not paws, not anything I could exile into another species. When the face lifted, what hit me was a monstrosity. It was intimacy. The shirt it wore had once been one of my father's undershirts, cut down and re-sewn badly at the collar. The hair had been hacked short in uneven chunks. Ointment shone in a dull smear along one side of the neck where the skin had cracked. One side of the mouth hung wetter than the other. The eyes had that dim house look. Not blind, just adapted to poor light. And behind all of that, horribly intact, was recognition. It looked at me like it knew me. Then my mother said from behind me, "That's your brother." The room tilted. No, that was all I had at first. No, she was crying now, but quietly, almost irritably, as if tears were one more indignity to manage. "His name is Noah. I don't have a brother." "Yes," she said, "you do." The thing in the wall, Noah, made a low sound then. Not a growl, not a moan, more like a hurt little murmur caught in the throat. My mother turned toward him instantly. "It's all right," she said. "It's all right, sweetheart." Sweetheart. That did more damage than the wall did. Because a hidden thing in a crawl space can still be filed under horror if you push hard enough. A mother soothing it with love pushes it somewhere worse. "What is he?" I said. Her face changed. Not because she didn't understand the question, because she hated that I had asked it that way. "He's your brother. What is he doing in the wall?" This time she closed her eyes before answering. "Your father wouldn't let them take him." That was the first clean shape of the truth. Not the whole truth. Just enough of it to kill off every easier possibility. My father had been the kind of man who believed privacy could solve any shame if you enforced it hard enough. He kept ugly things behind closed doors, broken furniture in the basement, money problems in his desk drawer, tears in bedrooms, questions in children. I had never once imagined that his idea of privacy extended to a human being, but once the possibility existed, memories started moving, not full scenes, fragments. His rule about scraping plates clean and taking food trash outside every night. His fury if I knocked on my mother's bedroom door after 10. The utility cabinet nailed shut when I was 8 because the pipes shifted. The reason my bedroom door always had to stay open at night. The sounds of the wall explained away as mice, old plumbing, raccoons under the eaves. You knew enough when you were little, my mother said. I stared at her. What does that mean? You used to leave him food. The room got very small. No, you did. For what? She looked at the opening. Because you heard him crying. And just like that, something came back. Not story, not even language, just a child's gesture. A paper towel folded around sandwich crusts. My hand sliding it across the kitchen floor toward the laundry door. A pause. A wet little sound from the other side, then running away before I had to think about what I had done. I put one hand on the wall to steady myself. Noah was still watching me from the dark, not with hunger, not with aggression, with a kind of fearful expectation I still don't have a clean word for. How long? I asked. My mother gave the answer after less than a second. Your whole life. I called Adult Protective Services that morning. Then I called the sheriff's office. I wish I could make that part dramatic, but horror rarely becomes less degrading when other people arrive. It just gets fluorescent. A deputy, a county social worker, an EMT, then more people after they saw the wall. Noah did not come out easily. He recoiled from strangers and made those same low broken sounds every time they came too close. He bit one medic hard enough to send blood down the man's wrist. My mother screamed then, really screamed, tried to stand, nearly fell. The social worker kept saying her name over and over in that careful professional voice that means I am trying very hard not to make this uglier in front of me than it already is. And through all of it, Noah kept looking for her. That was the worst part. Not the smell, not the wall, not the years of bowls and bandages and damp little hidden scavenge things. The worst part was that he kept looking for her. Not because she had hidden him, because she was still his mother. When they finally got him onto a stretcher and wheeled him out through the hall, he turned his head and found me immediately. And with a voice so ruined it barely counted as one, he said my name, not Evan, the little nickname only my family used when I was a kid. That was when I understood the last part one had been trying not to understand. He didn't just know me now. He had known me then. My mother never forgave me. Before they moved her to a rehab facility, she said exactly one thing that still wakes me up some nights. Don't make him feel unwanted again. Again, that word did more damage than anything else. Again means there had been a first time. Again means some child version of me had done enough to hurt him that my mother still carried it. Again means I did not grow up outside the secret. I grew up shaping around it. I cleaned out the house alone that summer. Once you know what a house has really been for, every object in it turns witness. The extra canned peaches in the pantry, the duplicate ointment purchases in old pharmacy bags, the baby monitor with tape over the speaker light, the cut-down undershirts in my mother's bottom drawer, the washcloths hidden behind the water heater, the scratch marks on the inside of the wall panel, the stack of children's books in the crawl space with the corners chewed soft, and in a shoebox behind my mother's winter clothes, one Polaroid, 2 boys on a kitchen floor, me maybe 7, the other one smaller, thinner, turned toward me. Not a creature, not a shame, just a child, my brother. I sold the house in August. That sounds cleaner than it felt. On paper, the hidden wall space had been reported, opened, documented, sanitized, and sealed. The county had done what counties do. Corrected the structure, filed the forms, converted horror into compliance. Paper means nothing. I moved back into my apartment and tried to resume my life. For a while, I almost believed I had. Then one Sunday I bought peaches. I set for them in a bowl on the kitchen counter, took a shower, and came back to find 3. I stood there dripping onto the tile, staring at the bowl. Maybe I had miscounted. Maybe one had rolled. Maybe I was already worse than I thought. Then I heard the sound from the hall closet. My water heater is in there. Old building. Pipes click and knock sometimes. This wasn't that. It was soft, wet, chewing. I did not move. I stood there barefoot and half-dressed, staring at the louvered closet door while the sound went on for maybe 5 seconds, maybe 20. Long enough for my entire body to understand it before my mind did. Then it stopped. A second later, something tapped once against the inside of the door. Not scratching, not banging, just one careful tap, like it knew I was there and didn't want to startle me. And then, from behind the slats, I heard a voice try my childhood nickname again. Not cleanly, not fully, but close enough that my knees nearly folded. I don't buy peaches anymore. I don't leave food in the sink overnight. I don't shut my bedroom door all the way. And every few nights, no matter how much I tell myself I'm imagining it, I still wake up listening for the sound of somebody chewing in the walls of a place I thought was finally mine. The worst part is not that I hear it sometimes. The worst part is that part of me still listens for whether it sounds hungry. I didn't realize how bad I had it until I was eating mouthfuls of sand. You are a pig, consuming, absorbing, destroying. That's what my grandfather whispered into my ear right before he died. I backed away from him confused, surrounded by other family in the hospital room. I looked at my sister, Kate, who regarded me with tearful eyes and a dismissive shrug. After some time in the room with everyone, her and I left to get food at the hospital Wendy's. It was a comfort thing for us. Besides, the ordeal had made me quite hungry. As I sat there eating a burger, Kate asked me what he had whispered. The odd nature of what he told me made me keep it from most of the family. I didn't want to upset anyone, but when she asked me, I decided I could tell her straight up. She didn't even believe me at first. After some convincing, I think she got creeped out by it. As far as the two of us knew, our grandfather wouldn't have had any reason to say something like that. It just didn't make sense. She ravaged her burger, and we sat in a concerned silence. I grabbed another order of fries to snack on as we went back to the room. Over the next couple days, I started to notice changes in myself. An extra spoonful of rice, another sandwich, a few more chips. I realized that I was eating more and more each day. I completely ran out of groceries in my apartment after just a few days, which was just not normal for me. The thing is, I stopped ever feeling satiated. I didn't even feel full after eating 2 whole meals back to back. It wasn't long before I found myself nibbling at the edges of my fork after finishing my food. Eventually, it became hard to focus at work because of it. A pit grew in my stomach, and it consumed anything and everything that I ate, leaving me feeling empty always. A sharp pang in the bottom of my ribs permeated my thoughts. I eyeballed one of my co-workers' prep meals in the work fridge. My mouth was practically frothing. I gulped down his food in minutes. I was too hungry to feel guilty. I was still hungry. My teeth bit down instinctively on the plastic spoon in my mouth, shattering it into a dozen sharp pieces. I chewed and swallowed until it was all gone. Only after finishing the spoon did I even realize what I had done. I had been in a haze. I approached a mirror and looked at myself. My gums were bleeding. What the hell is wrong with me? As much as I was disgusted by myself, it didn't stop me from my count. Over the next day or so, I ate. For more plastic spoons, 3 plastic forks, a paper plate, a series of brown napkins, a bottle cap, and I tore off a piece of my pillow in the middle of the night. I couldn't stop myself. The next morning, I had a beach day scheduled with some friends I had committed to a week prior. I didn't cancel because I hoped that it might take my mind off everything that had been happening recently. Once we were on the beach and settled in, I chose to stay mostly just sitting out on my towel, the pain in my stomach too strong for me to swim. Then I smelled something. Meat. Strong. The group of people to my right, about 15 feet away, were eating food. I looked over at them closely at the red chunks they ate with their bare hands. It was watermelon. It confused me. The scent of meat was overpowering. I wanted nothing more than to eat it all. But where was it? That's when I came to a realization. I was smelling them. I looked over their bodies, their sweating, glistening skin, and my mouth watered. My toes curled, and I bit my tongue. My stomach rumbled loudly. I needed to eat. I dug my fingers into the sand and clenched my fist around some. I felt the coarseness and the warmth. I imagined salt. Without another thought, I raised the sand to my mouth and poured it in. My mind was instantly hit with a wave of relief as the warm fluid permeated throughout my mouth. I chewed slowly, feeling the grittiness, the dryness, scraping my teeth and coating every surface. I grabbed another handful, this one bigger. I shoveled it into my mouth. Then I swallowed. The hot sand stuck to my throat and made it difficult to breathe. My throat spasmed as it struggled to force down the growing mounds of sand entering it. I continued to shovel more into my mouth. When I felt the first waves of sand landing in my stomach, the weight and warmth granted me immense satisfaction. I stared at the people next to me as I ate. I imagined eating them. I was only knocked out of my trance when one of my friends came running back to our stuff. I quickly stopped myself and wiped the sand from my face. That's when I started to feel the effects. I was incredibly thirsty and barely able to speak. I chugged a bottle of water in a second and left the beach then and there. When I got to my apartment, I drank more water and shoveled all the food I had left into my body. Despite the rocks in my stomach, I felt no less hungry. I debated what to do. I knew I couldn't keep eating how I had been. I even fantasized about eating humans. After some thought, I came up with something. I completely soaked a dish rag in rubbing alcohol before balling it up and shoving it into my mouth. I bit down hard. The taste and smell that entered my mouth, nose, and throat was incredibly nauseating and strong. It definitely lowered my appetite. I tied another rag around my face to hold the alcohol rag in my mouth. I must have looked insane, but it worked. I spent the afternoon pacing around my apartment trying to hold down my hunger. My mind was racing. You are a pig, consuming, absorbing, destroying. My grandfather's words. I wasn't the only one who knew about them. Kate, that evening at Wendy's, that burger she ate, I told her those very same words. I decided that I should see if she was okay. She didn't pick up when I called. Neither did either my parents. I decided to drive there to see her in person. I made it to my parents' house, where she lived with them in the early evening. I let myself in with the key under the doormat. Entering the front room, I was greeted by an eerie silence. The lights were on, but there were no people. Stepping into the living room, I found my first clue. Blood, splattered all over the carpet, being dragged across the floor and trailing away towards the kitchen. Becoming more nervous with each step, I followed the trail. Upon entering the kitchen, the scent of copper struck my nose. Even through the alcohol, the blood formed a pool that was obscured by the island in the middle of the room. Just at the edge of view was a single foot, the rest of the body presumably behind the island too. I ran to the other side of the island. The body wasn't even really a body. The foot was attached to about half of a bare shin, roughly torn at the end. I could see a pink bone sticking out from the muscle, shattered and jagged. There were no other intact body parts. I still don't know who it was. Within the pool of blood, alongside the foot, was a collection of torn chunks of unrecognizable flesh and bits of bone and tattered clothing. I fell to my knees and gagged, feeling coarse sand travel up my throat. I forcefully choked it back down. I stood back up, blood dripping from my legs, and I found a trail of bare bloody footprints continuing into the next hall, towards Kate's bedroom. I hesitated with fear as my hand rested on the doorknob. I bit down on the alcohol, feeling some seep into my throat, and I twisted the knob. It was locked. I forcefully twisted it again and again. As adrenaline began to course through me, I backed up and slammed my shoulder into the door. It hardly budged. I tried again. After several minutes of slamming and kicking at the door, the wood finally cracked and bowed in at the lock. With a final push of my body weight, the door crashed in, and I fell to the ground in Kate's room. It was in an atrocious state. Everything inside had been torn, ripped, smashed, bitten, or thrown. The room had been ransacked and destroyed. I stood and stepped further into the room. Kate was nowhere to be seen, either on the blood-soaked carpet or the bed, just trash and tattered bits of clothing. I turned around and finally set my eyes upon the open closet. Kate was slumped over on the ground, leaning back against the hanging clothes. A pool of blood surrounded her. Her hand was gripped around something pink and spongy. Her jaw was loose, revealing a mess of blood and flesh in her mouth. I fell to the ground and grabbed her by the shoulders, causing her head to fall towards me. Now able to see the top of her head, I found the cause of her state. A sizable portion of the top back of her skull was removed, as if it had been forcefully pried open. The pink brain matter underneath was shredded. I crawled away in utter terror. Tears welled up in my eyes. The room faded and all I saw was her. What had she done? I got up and ran out of the room, and then out of the house. I called the police but couldn't speak into the phone due to the rag. I drove away immediately after. I've been hiding in my apartment for the past few hours since writing this. I'm not scared of being accused of any crimes. I'm hiding because even through what I saw, all the blood and tears, even to the alcohol rag, my stomach still rumbles. My mouth waters. I can't face people, lest they end up like the others. Despite everything, one thought powers over my mind. I'm dying to eat. I asked my wife to send me a sign that she was okay after she died. I wish that I hadn't. My wife Amelia and I met in high school. She was a popular, bubbly girl that everybody loved, and I was lucky to have anyone even give me a second glance. I honestly don't know how the hell I pulled it off, but after a chance encounter in the library, we became inseparable. Fast forward 4 years, and we were married, ready to take on anything the world could throw at us together. At least that's what the plan was. Ami was at the ripe old age of 24 when she began to experience severe headaches and frequent nosebleeds. When we got the news, I felt as though we had both been given the 8-month prognosis. I'll never forget the tears and sobbing, the cries of anguish that resounded through the doctor's office. That had all been for me. Amelia sat quietly, a faraway look in her green eyes. I took off extended time from work and dedicated my hours to Ami, whether she was in the hospital or at home with me and her family. As she became more and more withered, I couldn't help but to notice the looks her father and sister would give me. It was as though they blamed me somehow for their daughter's condition. The venom in their eyes seemed to hiss, "It should have been you." One night as Ami and I lay together in bed, the insignificant voices droning from the TV, she began to ask me about something we had never discussed before in all our years together. "Do you think we go on in the afterlife?" The question hit me like a brick wall. I had never been religious, but what was I supposed to say to the love of my life, who was facing her own fading mortality? "Of course, baby," without a doubt in my mind. "Your light is too bright to ever go out. I believe that it'll shine forever." She looked into my eyes after that, as if examining me for dishonesty. Thankfully, she did not detect it. "Good. I'll be waiting for you. I'm sure it'll feel like just a few seconds or so. Time and suffering won't exist anymore." I should have let the conversation end, but playing up my lie even more, I said, "I want you to send me a sign, Ami. Send me a signal of some sort that you're thriving, whether it's that old Madonna song you like, or a canary out on the porch, singing its heart out. Anything so that I can think of you." Amelia had wound herself even tighter into me at that point, a sad smile on her face. "I will." The doctors hadn't been quite right with their grim prediction. Amelia persisted for almost 10 months before that light of hers finally faded. I'm ashamed to say that though I tried my damnedest to speak at her funeral, I broke down and couldn't do it. I was forced to sit and watch with red eyes as her family and friends told wonderful stories about the love of my life, my best friend, and I, her husband, had nothing to offer the congregation. Time seemed to slow down after she left me. My performance at work dipped. I began avoiding my own friends even more, and I picked up the bottle. There seemed to be a hole, deep and hollow, a black chasm that had formed deep within me, and it would never, ever be filled again. The first sign came 2 months after she had passed. I was sitting on my porch, drifting into sleep, the glass of whiskey in my hand slowly sliding out. There was a quick movement, and I jerked back to full consciousness. A white cat had darted out of nowhere and was now sitting at the bottom step of my porch. I had a mind to shoot away, but somehow my booze-addled brain was still able to recall the conversation that Ami and I had all those eons ago. I sat forward, hardly believing it. The cat merely looked up at me with green eyes, and I could swear that it looked as though she was smiling. I began to smile myself, tears forming in my eyes. Then there was more movement. 2 coyotes sprung forward, fast and the cat had a chance to react. I myself fell to my knees, clumsily reaching out for her, but she had no chance. The 2 haggard animals ripped her apart. A flurry of white fur and red blood stabbed into my eyes and heart. The brief feeling of happiness that I had been snuffed out when the coyotes looked up at me. And this time there was no doubt. It was smiling. 2 weeks later, I had my old radio plugged in, listening to sad music. Yes, I have a phone and YouTube, but listening to the radio had always been something Ami and I had done. Going back to high school, I was again nearly asleep when I could hear Madonna's seductive voice over the airwaves. I could again feel a sort of relief, though my cynicism wouldn't allow me to believe that this was actually my wife. It's just a radio. How many Madonna songs are played a day? I closed my eyes tight and turned over. But then suddenly there was a terrible static sound blaring from the radio, and amongst that static, what sounded like screams. Screams the likes of which I have never heard before, born from some place that should not exist. I sat up in bed, glancing at the old unit, but now there was only Madonna, singing a Spanish lullaby. I had to have been losing it. Either the liquor or the sadness it was supposed to be killing were finally getting to me. I had to do better for myself. For Amelia, I unplugged the radio, staggered down to the kitchen, and poured out every single bottle of alcohol and can of beer in my kitchen. I had had enough of this shit. Ami wouldn't have wanted me to live like this. Even if I didn't believe she was still out there somewhere, waiting for me. I went back to work with a new haircut, shave, and mindset. I was going to get back on track. My boss even complimented me during my shift, as I took phone calls from potential clients. I felt a lot better than I had in recent memory. 2 hours into my shift, I popped open a snack and drank some water to hydrate myself. As I answered my next call, I spat the water out as a low, scratchy voice whispered to me, "Life is terrible, but death is endless, my love." The voice was Ami's. I fell over backwards in my chair, kicking over my keyboard and unplugging my headphones. I jumped up and looked at my phone, but the call had ended. There was no record of it when I attempted to do a redial. I've since bought more alcohol. Hell, even more than I had before. Whether I'm sitting on my porch, driving home, or even lying a ball in my bed, I can't help but to notice the inherent cruelty in life, seemingly magnified twofold. But I asked for this. I did ask her to send me a sign. After all, I will never use chat room ever again. This story happened about 10 years ago. At the time, I was a boy in middle school, probably 8th grade. I remember one day after school, I went on my computer that was in my room and joined some online chat room. I would play around on chat rooms from time to time, usually with my friends, but I was just bored after school this time. I remember chatting with some random people for a while, and then I started talking to a girl that said she was in high school and she seemed pretty nice. I stopped joking around and had a pretty normal conversation with her. I asked her where she lived, and we happened to live in the same state. Then she told me that she lived in a town that was not too far away from mine. I thought this was a nice coincidence. We talked for a while, and then she told me to start messaging with her on Kik. Kik was a popular messaging app back then. So of course I had one. You could have a profile on Kik with a picture. So I was curious to see what the girl looked like. We switched our conversation to Kik, and I saw by her profile picture that she looked pretty good. We talked on there for about a week. I was excited that a good-looking older girl seemed to be into me. I asked her for her Snapchat, but she said she didn't have one. This didn't seem weird at all to me back then because those were the early days of Snapchat, and I had only just made one a couple months before. Eventually, the girl said that we should hang out. Of course, I couldn't drive because I was just 13, but she told me she had just turned 16 and got her license. I told her to come over on Friday after school, and I gave her my address. She agreed. When Friday came around, I was pretty excited. I got home from school and immediately messaged her, but when I did, she didn't respond. I waited and waited, but there was still no response. After a while, I grew impatient and realized she must have decided not to come. Then later that night, I looked on Kik again and saw that her account was gone. I was confused and a little disappointed. I figured she blocked me or something. But I wasn't all that mad, because I thought the whole time that it just felt a little bit weird. I wasn't completely sure if she was even real or not, so I decided to just forget the whole thing. But a few days later, during the next week, out of nowhere I got a message from her again. She said she was sorry that she couldn't make it, but something came up. At this point, I was pretty much over her, so I just said it's fine, don't worry about it. She sent a smile face back, and I didn't respond. I wasn't really interested to see if she would say anything else, so I turned off notifications for the Kik app. When I came home from school that day, I got into my room and noticed that my window was open. I always kept it shut, so I figured one of my parents opened for some reason, and I closed it. I did some homework and then played video games for the rest of the night. Then at about 11, I went to bed. As I lay down and closed my eyes, for some reason I just got curious to see if that girl ever responded to me. I guess it just bothered me how her account was completely gone and then back again. I got my phone from my nightstand and opened the Kik app. I saw that I had about 5 messages, all from the same girl. As I read them, I started to get the chills. The first one said, "Hey, I've decided to come over today." The next one said, "I'm here, where are you?" Then there was a picture in my bedroom. Then she said, "Guess I'll just wait for you here." And then the last text, which was sent just an hour ago, said, "Look in your closet." I felt like I couldn't move. I looked around my room to my closet, which was on the other side. The door was slightly cracked open, but I really couldn't see inside. I wasn't going to take any chances. I slowly was able to sit up in my bed. Then I stood up. I couldn't help but stare at the closet door the whole time. As I started to walk, I saw it slowly start to open. My jaw dropped. The door kept opening, and when it was open enough to see inside, I saw not a girl, but a full-frown man. That was enough to make me run for the door as fast as I could. I ran out of my room and down the hall to my parents' bedroom. I ran inside and closed the door, then I woke up my parents. They were pretty confused, and when I told them a man was in my closet, they got even more confused. But I was 13 years old, so my dad didn't think I would make something like that up. He left the room and went to my bedroom. He came back a couple minutes later saying that the man was probably gone, but he had seen how my closet was messed up and my window was wide open once again. The police ended up being called. I was too embarrassed to tell them the story, so we all just assumed it was a random break-in. I went back on Kik to see that the account was once again deleted, so I don't think I would have been much help to them anyways. Nothing else happened after that. The smoke detector in my hallway has been blinking Morse code, and I made a mistake of translating it. I want to start by saying I'm not a paranoid person. I don't check my locks twice. I don't believe in ghosts. I have never once in my life thought something was watching me. I'm saying this because what I'm about to describe has made me into someone I don't recognize, and I need to write it down before I convince myself it isn't happening. 3 weeks ago, I noticed the smoke detector in my hallway was blinking wrong. Every smoke detector blinks. That little red LED pulses once every 30 or 40 seconds to tell you the battery is fine. Mine has done that for the 2 years I've lived here. Steady, predictable, background noise you stop seeing after the first week. On March 3rd, it started blinking in clusters. 2 quick blinks. Pause. 3 quick blinks. Pause. 1 long blink. It wasn't steady anymore. It had a rhythm. I stood in the hallway watching it for about 5 minutes before I decided it was a battery issue. Told myself to replace it on the weekend and went to bed. The next night, I noticed it again. Same clusters. Same rhythm. Different pattern than the night before. I'm an amateur radio hobbyist. I got my license in college mostly because a girl I liked was into it, and I never let it go after she did. I mention this because it means I know Morse code. Not fluently, but enough. I wasn't thinking about Morse code when I watched the detector blink, but at some point my brain started parsing the clusters automatically the way you start reading subtitles, even when you speak the language. And I realized the blinks weren't random. They spelled my name, my full first name, 7 letters, repeated 3 times, then a pause, then it started again. I stood in my hallway at 11 p.m. watching a smoke detector blink my name at me, and I want to tell you that I felt scared, but that's not accurate. I felt embarrassed, like I was the kind of person who sees shapes in clouds and thinks they mean something. I told myself I was pattern matching, seeing signal and noise. The human brain does this. I know this. I went to bed. The next night, I set up my phone to record the detector. I let it run from midnight to 6 a.m. In the morning, I played the footage back at 2x speed and transcribed every blink. Midnight to 1:15 a.m., it blinked my name on a loop. 1:15 a.m. to 3:40 a.m. it blinked. I can see you from here. 3:40 a.m. to 5:55 a.m. it blinked. You look different when you sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my transcription notebook, and I read those sentences 4 times. My hands were doing something they've never done before. Not shaking, vibrating. This fast, fine tremor like my bones were humming. I took the smoke detector off the ceiling. Standard battery powered unit. No Wi-Fi, no smart features, no connection to anything. I opened the battery compartment. 9 volt, slightly corroded. I removed the battery. I put the detector on my kitchen counter. The LED blinked once, without a battery, without power of any kind. One single blink. I watched it for 10 minutes after that. Nothing, just the one. I threw it in the dumpster behind my building. I bought a new one from the hardware store the next morning. Installed it. New battery. Tested it. Normal steady blink. I felt stupid for how relieved I was. That night the new detector blinked normally until 1 a.m. Then the clusters started. You threw me away. I transcribed it in real time standing in my hallway in the dark. My phone light pointed at the ceiling. Notebook in my other hand. You threw me away, but I'm not in the detector. I'm in the ceiling. I've always been in the ceiling. The detector is just how I talk to you. I stopped transcribing. I stood there for a long time looking up. My ceiling is standard drywall. Off-white. A small water stain near the bathroom from a leak the landlord fixed before I moved in. Nothing unusual. Nothing wrong. Just a ceiling. It blinked again. Don't take this one down. It's dark up here without the light, and I need to see you to make sure you're still safe. I need to explain why that sentence broke something in me. Everything before that was frightening. My name. I can see you. You look different when you sleep. All of that is threatening. I can process threatening. Threatening means something wants to hurt you, and you can respond to that. But I need to see you to make sure you're still safe. Is not threatening. It's protective. Something inside my ceiling has been watching me through a smoke detector LED, and it thinks it's keeping me safe. It's not angry that I threw the old one away. It's worried that without the light, it can't watch me properly. I don't know which is worse. Something in your ceiling that wants to hurt you, or something in your ceiling that loves you. I set up a small webcam on my bookshelf with a lens aimed at the hallway ceiling. I set it to record all night. I reviewed the footage the next morning. The detector blinked in clusters all night. I didn't transcribe those. I was focused on something else in the footage. At 3:47 a.m., for exactly 11 seconds, the red LED stopped blinking and turned solid. Continuous light. And in that solid red glow, pressed flat against the ceiling around the smoke detector, there was a face. Not behind the ceiling. Not inside the drywall. Pressed against the surface. Like someone lying face down on the other side of the glass floor. The features were compressed. Flattened, the way a child presses their face against a window. But the proportions were wrong. The face was too wide. The mouth was too long. And it was looking straight down through the detector into the hallway where I sleep. I paused the footage. I zoomed in. I don't know what I expected. Something monstrous. Something alien. Something I could point to and say that is not human, that is other, that is something I can categorize and therefore manage. The face is mine, not similar to mine. Mine, my forehead, my nose, the scar above my left eyebrow from when I was 12. My face, pressed against the ceiling from the other side, looking down at the hallway where I was sleeping, wearing an expression I have never made. Every feature is correct, but the expression is wrong. It's the way you look at food when you haven't eaten in days. Not anger, not menace. Hunger. Deep, patient, desperate hunger. And it's smiling. I haven't slept in the hallway since. I move my mattress to the living room. The smoke detector in the living room blinks normally. I check it every night. So far the clusters haven't followed me. But last night at 2 a.m., I woke up and looked at the living room detector, and it blinked once. Just once. Out of rhythm. I lay in the dark for 3 hours watching it. It didn't do it again. This morning, I found a crack in the living room ceiling that wasn't there yesterday. Small, barely visible. I keep telling myself it's just a crack. I'm posting this because I need someone to tell me what to do. I can't call my landlord and say there's a face in my ceiling. I can't break my lease because a smoke detector blinked my name. But I can't keep living under something that looks like me and watches me sleep with a face that's hungry. The hallway detector is still blinking in clusters. I can see it from where I'm sitting. I'm not going to translate it. It blinked my name again. I could tell without translating. You learn the rhythm of your own name faster than you'd think. The crack in the living room ceiling is slightly longer than it was this morning. I measured it with a ruler before I started writing this. It was 4 inches. It's 4.5 now. Something in my ceiling is following me room by room. It has my face. It thinks it's protecting me. And it's getting closer. I don't think the ceiling is going to hold much longer. And I don't think what comes through is going to look like me by the time arrives. Alright everyone, that's all the stories for tonight. And I think that's going to do it for me tonight. I hope you guys had a relaxing time, and I'll catch you guys later. Good night, everyone.